Welcome.
You're now listening to Dirty Feet.
Bonjour, oui, vous êtes sur les ondes des pieds sales, aka
Dirty Feet podcast on No More Radio.
And hosted by
Joanie Farran,
JD Papillon,
Allison Burns. Stay tuned, we're gonna move you. If you haven't yet heard of Ohad Naharin and his company, Batsheva Dance Company, then wake up, smell the flowers. It's a great, exciting company from Israel. Today, we're going to be talking about one of his movement languages that he created called Gaga. So this has nothing to do with Lady Gaga. This is the language of Gaga that was originated from the belief in the healing, dynamic, ever-changing power of movement. And who we have in studio to talk to us about this today is actually the only Canadian who is certified to teach this movement style. So that's very lucky for us. We're going to be speaking with Laura Toma. Laura is a Romanian-born Canadian at heart. She's done the program at the Ottawa School of Dance. She's participated in parts in Toronto. She's done the Laban School in London in UK. And lots to brag about. And I want to hear more about you, Laura, before we move on into this world of Gaga and whatnot. So please fill in the blanks. What have I left out?
Well, no pressure, right? What have you left out about myself? Yeah, my first introduction to the performing arts was in theater, actually. At home in Ottawa, I was a part of the Ottawa Theatre School, and I was primarily doing Shakespeare and a little bit of Buffon. And then after that, I sort of, because my parents told me it wasn't a good idea to continue on that route, I went to university at Carleton, and then it was after that that I discovered that dance is actually really what I wanted to be doing.
Can I ask what you were studying at Carleton?
Of course. I was studying international business.
Okay.
So that's how the whole international bug sort of got implanted somewhere underneath my flesh. And because of that, I spent time in Spain, and then I stayed, and then I went back and forth and back and forth. So yeah, and while I was in university, actually, I before really studying contemporary dance, I trained as a ballroom and Latin dance instructor. So that was cool. I really miss that, actually, but who knows, one day. And then I went to Laban in the UK and spent a really good informative year there, and got in touch with my movement side, and really fell in love with it, and then returned to Ottawa and then participated in the professional program at the School of Dance, which was really good. After that, I went to Israel and decided that I would become a Gaga teacher.
Were you aware of Batsheva and Ohad Naharin before you went to Israel? Was that the reason you went?
Yes, it was the reason I went. I had been introduced to Batsheva when I was in London at Sadler's Wells. I went to see one of his pieces, the first piece, and I was floored at, even though I had nosebleed seats, like really, really high and squinting, but I was like, those dancers' movements totally penetrated, like through the space, like up into where I was sitting and just into my like eyesight. It was just the craziest thing I had ever seen. Those dancers, the way they moved, they were animals. Like there was something really unusual and powerful about their movement. And after that, someone was telling me about the way they train, and they told me they train in this method that's called Gaga, and it's really specific only to Batsheva, the artistic director, having created this movement language. He doesn't really like to call it a technique, so it's a movement language. And from there, I decided that I would go and do a summer intensive with them one summer. So I went, and it was that summer that Ohad announced to the the audience at the summer intensive that he was thinking for a very long time about starting a Gaga teacher training program, because up until then and until now, the people who were teaching Gaga were just company members, current or former. And he really, because this Gaga is his baby, he really wants to spread it and sort of leave it as his legacy in the world. So he wanted to get more people teaching it and to have it reach further around the world. So with that, again, he planted that seed in my mind, and I decided really to keep emailing them and finding out more. Is this really going to happen? When is it going to happen? And sure enough, information came out, and I went and I auditioned in New York for it with one of the company members that was there at the time.
You auditioned to train?
I auditioned to be accepted into the teacher training program. And and I went there sort of blindly, not really knowing what to expect, and there was a group of about under 30 of us, actually, and there was people from all over the world, people from the States. I was the only Canadian. There were quite a few Europeans, a few people from Asia, and one or two Latin American dancers. Yeah, it was a roller coaster ride. It was the most intense 9 months of training in dance and in movement that I've ever had, like on such a deep level, deeper than any other training I had done. And it really changed me, and I'm so happy to be able to teach it, but I'm also so fortunate to have it as inside of me now, and it's really a part of me, and I feel really blessed to know and to understand Gaga, but of course I'm very excited to share it with people. Now that I live here in Montreal, I really, really want to reach out to as many dancers, and not only dancers either. We can talk about that after, but there's two kinds of Gaga. There's Gaga for people, as in regular, ordinary people, not trained or anyone who has studied dance. And then there's Gaga for dancers. So, yeah, the thing with it, though, is that over here not very many people know about Gaga. So I guess it's great to be on your show so I can preach my thing.
I do have one distinction I want to make or clear up. Does Gaga encompass all of Ohad Naharin's choreography, or is it the training base where his work comes from? Can you call anything he does Gaga, or is it more specific and the work that he produces is beyond Gaga?
It's a really good question. A lot of people ask me that. Gaga doesn't have any choreographic base to it. It's a form of movement exploration, and because during Gaga you discover so many things about the body and you work again on such a deep level, it gives the dancers studying Gaga a really detailed and again deep understanding of how they move and how they can move and the possibilities that there are in their bodies for movement. So from this sort of canvas, then he takes it to another level in his choreographies, and he does put movement onto it, but it's from this understanding that these dancers have, that Gaga has given them. And this is why I think that when you see Batsheva dance and when people are so wowed by them, it's because they train in Gaga, not just because Ohad has taken dancer X and dancer Y from wherever and then put his choreography on them.
Right.
Because I've seen some of Ohad's work on other companies that haven't been his company, Batsheva, and it's not the same. It really isn't. It's so different. They don't come from that same mentality because they don't train in Gaga every day. So the work that they produce, the choreography that they produce with their bodies, isn't the same at all.
And how much of Gaga as a movement language is actually formal? Is any of it based on shapes and producing those types of movements which are really associated with Ohad? Or is it very much just an internal exploration of movement?
It's very, very much an internal exploration of movement. Every dancer who's participating in a Gaga class, or of course non-dancer, really just has his or her own experience, and nothing is invalid. As a teacher, I would just give different prompts and different guidelines and different sort of segues into the movement exploration that I want to focus on. But that dancer ultimately is in charge of his or her own experience, so they can take it wherever they want. They can play with the intensity. If I'm asking them to go at 100% and they don't feel like it's right for them, then they can work at 30% or 20%. Or if there's an injury, that's the great thing about Gaga, that you can do it if you're pregnant, or if you have a serious injury, you can, and it can also almost be therapeutic too, because it's such deep work and such an aware way of working with the body that it can be healing.
In a more practical kind of viewpoint, like when you give a Gaga class, what is the structure going to be like of the class? Like, how do you approach the teaching of Gaga?
That's a good question. Again, there's two distinct ways. When I'm teaching a people class, there's sort of a way that I teach that, and then if it's a dancer class, there's another way. So if I can start with maybe the dancer class, they really do overlap. It's almost the same because we're still researching qualities and textures and different ways of moving. But in a dancer's class, the difference is that we work with set dancer vocabularies, like we'll do a tendu, or we'll do a plie, or we'll do jumps at the end, but not in the sense that I'm going to teach a jump sequence and then everyone's going to learn it. More in the sense that people work on jumps, on getting themselves off the floor, but with these added layers. Gaga is very much about layering things and about trying not to cancel what we researched at the beginning of class when we're doing jumps or plies. And it just comes from it's just like sort of approaching these standardized, like I said, like a tendu, but approaching it from a more maybe somatic place of how is it that we're doing the tendu? Where is the tendu coming from? Is it coming from deep within our centers, or is it just our leg that's going out and shooting to the front? So it depends really what the teacher wants to focus on that day, but we can do tendus in so many ways, and that's just, yeah.
And is a lot of the approach based on biomechanics? Like, you look at the technique like axis syllabus, where they really look at the architecture of the body and the way the body moves in very almost scientific ways. Could you say that about Gaga? Is it much more of a felt kind of approach to the body?
It's a little bit of both. I keep telling people that I think Ohad is a genius, but I think also that it's so interesting when I speak to him about how he came up with Gaga, because having studied at Laban, and I know choreology and a little bit of Laban's movement research and practice. So when I went to have my first introduction to Gaga, I was like, oh, like, have you heard of Laban? Have you heard of this and this and this? And he's like, no, I haven't heard of it. And I said, well, it's very similar. And it's so interesting because everything that he came up with, although maybe it sounds like it's taken from yoga or whatever, really he just discovered it on his own. Like he researched his body on such a deep level that he just came up with it from his own time, exploring all the various things that he was interested in. So it encompasses different biomechanical movements that the body can do. It also encompasses, like I said, textures, or you were specifically speaking to feelings. Was it feelings, or sorry? The way it's felt in the body, like the way your own perception of your body moving in space, rather than the architecture of the body, the way like muscles and are known to move. So definitely the first one, and he's not like a physiotherapist or what is it called?
Kinesiologist.
That's it. He's not a kinesiologist. He doesn't really know that much about the construction of the body when it comes to which muscles and which bones, and So in class, although we're working all these things that can be classified very, very specifically, like he'll never refer to like your humerus or your quadratus lumborum. It's just like it really does group everything together, and it does work on such a precise level and on like honing in on different parts of the body, but without the terminology and without it actually makes it more accessible that way. I haven't done Axis Syllabus, I don't really know, but I heard it's amazing, and I would love to try it, but he doesn't specifically go to those things.
In the description of Gaga,
there's a lot of repetition about the pleasure of it and the connection between effort and pleasure, and it even goes so far as to talk about laughter and being silly. I'm interested in, when you're training to be a teacher, where's the focus on that, and how are you taught to teach that? How are you taught to bring that into your classes?
Well, one of the things Ohad always gets people to often, not always, gets people to connect to is a passion to move. And I think that is so, so important, especially for dancers. Well, of course, for everybody, but I'll just speak in terms of dancers, because dancers, when they're taking class, they're almost so like cerebral, or very focused on what they're doing, or about performing it properly, or getting the movement the way the teacher wants it to be. But Ohad is so much not about that, but rather about like just moving and being passionate about moving in space and about your body moving. I haven't heard any other class, at least classes I've taken, that have asked the dancers to sort of let go of everything else and to just be passionate about moving and dance. And it really, when you see the students and myself, when I've experienced it in class, like focusing on that and sort of like releasing everything else, it produces like a whole other level of movement. Because the origin is different. The reason that they're doing, even if it's the same move, like raising their arm up, if they're raising their arm up from a place of like passion about raising their arm up, it just changes everything so much. And again, that's why when I see the company perform, it's like, it's different. They don't look the way other companies do when they're dancing, because like they're just so passionate about their bodies and about every little thing that's going on in their bodies.
As a teacher, do you feel responsibility to make sure that the people that you're instructing are feeling that? Do you have approaches to that?
Everyone really is in charge of their own experience, as I said, but I can help them. I can
inspire.
I can inspire. Of course, in Gaga, the teacher's doing constantly as much as the participants are doing. So I haven't spoken a lot about the structure of the class in terms of, well, you did ask, but basically a Gaga class is an hour to an hour and 15 minutes in length, and you do not stop moving the whole time. There's no pauses or breaks, or, it's just, whether it's the smallest movement to the largest movement, there's always some more movement happening in the body, even for the teacher. So when you speak of inspire, I'm also doing so when I speak about passion to move, and of course I have words that I can use to sort of incite that and to get people to connect to it, but I'm also connecting to it, and Gaga is very much pro imitation. So if the student wants to imitate the teacher or other dancers, it's so encouraged.
I've only taken one Gaga class in my life, actually, with you. And one thing that I felt really interesting was the approach to this very fluid disconnection of the different limbs and parts of the body, so that they become very mobile, but always also connected. So you never disconnect, but you also focus a lot on liberating different aspects of your body, so that the flow is constant through your body. How do you approach that so that you can create disconnection even by extending the body in so many different directions and ways? So there are so many key terms or key investigations in Gaga, and one of them relates directly to this, and it is what we call traveling stuff. So if you've noticed, well, I haven't mentioned that many of the terms we use, but it's very accessible. It's very like plain words so that everyone can understand it. It's not sophisticated at all. So like traveling stuff. So when we're moving in Gaga, we always want to be aware of the fact that there's things that are actually always moving within us. And if we think about it, well, duh, right? There's our blood, there's energy, there's whatever. So not, even when we're totally still, we're actually not totally still. So we're constantly as a teacher, I'm constantly trying to bring awareness to this when I'm teaching. So even if I'm then speaking about the fingers, if the layers that I've been layering during the class are
are working, then the people are still connected to this traveling stuff, and it gives more of a sense of totality and completion, even in the smallest minute investigations of the body. So actually, Gaga is really, it's about the whole more than it is about the individual parts of the body. So even when we're focusing on like an individual part, we're never forgetting the whole, or we're trying very hard not to, and that is a difficult thing. Many times when I've taken classes or given classes, I can see that if I'm focusing on the ankle, the rest of the body, if I look, actually there's nothing happening in it. So it really takes time to get a grip on this when you're doing Gaga. It doesn't happen overnight. So but it's a very, very important part of Gaga, so you're right.
After your investigations into Gaga, have you returned to either theater or social dance or something and to see the impact that information has had on your body?
Well, I haven't done theater or social dance for a very long time, but in terms of my dancing other people's movement or creating my own movement, for sure. Gaga is definitely a part of me now, and as I continue to investigate it, because it never really ends, it's totally endless. Yeah, I feel like my approach to any kind of movement has drastically changed because of my time spent studying Gaga.
Any specifics that you could pinpoint of things that have changed for you?
Well, what we were just speaking about, the
whole body,
the wholeness of the body, even when we're doing the smallest little movements. I'm sort of speaking more about myself, but I've always kind of been very much into details, like almost too much sometimes. But what was amazing is that Gaga actually heightened that even more. It not only heightened it, but it sort of made me understand detail on a different level.
Do you feel that Gaga, as a movement language, leaves a sort of signature on the body that can become difficult sometimes to reconcile with other choreographers' signatures? I mean, it's sort of an extension of Alison's question, where do you ever feel that you need to fight a bit against that Gaga being in your body so that you can correspond to what the choreographer is looking for?
I think if you're an open-minded dancer, then it shouldn't. You can always take what you know about Gaga and what you've discovered through Gaga to anything that you're doing. Even if, like in Gaga, we don't connect to a collapsed body. Very rarely. We don't really succumb to gravity. But then, I've thought about this often, but then when we're talking about a technique like release technique, that's very much the opposite, right? But I think you can still connect to this. In Gaga, we float as our base way of being. And even if you're working on release, which is, it's succumbing to the gravity that is around us, I still think that you can connect to the floating, and in fact, it'll just give you more softness in your landing, in your moving, in your floor work, and anything. So one doesn't have to cancel the other.
With the approach to floor work, when you actually drop down on the floor, is that something that is at all explored in Gaga teaching? Like, is it something that you ever did when you were at Batsheva learning the technique, or is it something that is sort of overlooked?
I think floor work today has an aesthetic that people always associate it with. But really, if we're just speaking about floor work, it means the body on the floor. Then no, because Ohad often choreographs sequences on the floor, but it's not that European floor work aesthetic of the release and the over the shoulders and all that, right? He doesn't necessarily do that. But in Gaga class, we do go on the floor every class. We have a section of the class where we're on the floor exploring different things, exploring the same things that we're doing standing, but either horizontally or on the floor in some way. So it is not an omitted facet.
And when you were talking about Gaga for dancers, you were talking about using all of this approach, all of this type of philosophy, but using traditional dance movements also with like relevés and tendus and everything. Is it going to be the type of technique when you use that for that would be more classical or ballet techniques, but approached through Gaga movement, or is there a variety of more dance techniques that are used to sort of combine with Gaga?
No, it's mostly these classical terms, but I think that I haven't taken a modern class in a little while, but my experience is that we also do those in modern. Like we'll do tendus and relevés or pliés and all that. It's mostly just the classical approach that we layer on top with the Gaga vocabulary. I'm just thinking, the thing that came to mind was like, do we do bounces, right? And we don't, for example. But we work with so many other things that I guess the body will could get there anyways if it wanted to doing a bounce.
Have you taken a ballet or more classical dance class recently? And if you did you feel a difference in how you approach those classes now?
I haven't taken a ballet class recently, and if I had, I probably would have been so caught up in what am I doing that I don't know if I would have been like, okay, connect to the Gaga in me. But ideally, that is what you would love to. It would be good to do if you had a really good handle on your ballet technique. Then taking the Gaga classes and being able to apply the Gaga to your ballet class would change your experience of doing ballet a lot, like significantly, and it would probably be a really cool experience.
Do you have any insight into where the name Gaga came from?
Yeah, I've heard Ohad say so many different things about it. One of them being very simple, saying that he just got really tired of saying Ohad Naharin's movement language. It was such a wordy title, and he thought that it was worthy of its own name. So he played around with different things, and he just thought of Gaga. Another thing I've heard him also say is that he wanted it to be Kaka, but he thought that wouldn't be appropriate. And then he's also said Gaga is it's a sound, right? It's almost like a primal word that anybody can say, whether it's a baby or a 90-year-old person. And that just speaks to the fact that anybody can do Gaga, and it's, again, not sophisticated. It's the body, it's everyone, and everyone has it.
This actually brings me back to the way you give those Gaga for the People classes, and it's something that, as dancers, we might not think about all of the beneficial effects that something like this could have on people who are not dancers. And what do you feel is the value of people who are non-dancers taking a Gaga class? How do you feel that it can enrich in their lives?
Well, I think the thing that I love the most about Gaga is how free it is. And this is something that anyone can benefit from, whether it's me, another dancer, or a regular person. So just the freedom and the time with your own body. A big part of Gaga is that, there's a few rules, and one of them is that no mirrors are allowed and no one is allowed to watch. So this is something that can be so nice for anyone that it doesn't necessarily feel very good in their own skin, or is uncomfortable with their body, or doesn't enjoy moving their body. So taking a Gaga class for people who have, just come from their 9-to-5 job, they go to the community center, they go to the studio, and they take this class that is totally and 100% just for themselves, and about awakening their bodies. I think it's a gift, and because I've taken many people classes and I enjoy teaching them as well. It's so rewarding to see the experiences that these regular people have when they take class. It's just like the smiles on their faces. It really is a joy, and I haven't found anywhere to teach people classes in Montreal, but I'm searching, and I would love to find a place to teach it. I was recently listening to an acceptance speech that Ohad gave for the American Dance Festival, the award that he received for Lifetime Achievement. I think it was a few years ago now, but he, in his short speech, he made a request for dancers, and the most important of that for me was his claiming that we should all abolish mirrors and that they spoil the soul. I thought that was a beautiful thing, and I do agree with that very much.
You're making me think of way back when on the old show we had some Scottish dancers on, and they were talking about Scottish dancing and how it just makes people happy, and how there's like a social aspect to it, and then you're being physical, and there's the endorphins and that excitement. So it just made me think that kind of these people Gaga classes has something in common with social dance in a way. Do you feel that?
Yes and no. I think that what it can have in common with social dance is sort of the happiness aspect that you mentioned, but really it is very individual, and when you're taking a class, you're really not focused on what other people are doing unless you want to imitate them, for example. It really is just a journey with oneself and one's own body. So, and it is that gives people the pleasure and the happiness, less the fact that I'm interacting and being social with my partner or with the person I'm in contact with in the class.
There's something too in that no one's watching, that everyone in the room is participating, and that I'm assuming with the people class that it's not about creating a presentation. No. And I think that too, in the way it's about the here and the now and the moving for the sake of the moving.
You're totally right. And the reason there are these rules, some people have a hard time with them. It's really just to create a safety place for people to walk into this room and know that they won't be judged. They will go through a really, really beautiful journey with themselves, but it'll just be that, and then when they walk out the door, it'll just, it'll be something they experienced, and it'll ultimately have changed them and changed maybe the way they feel with themselves for the rest of the day or the rest of the week. Yeah, it's I guess it can be like a little sacred hour for those people, and that's where the happiness comes from, I think.
From what I gather, there seems to be this moving away from the performative aspect of dance, even in the Gaga for Dancers classes. Do you feel that sometimes it can be hard for people to move away from that, to move away from trying to perform for the other dancers or around them?
I think it's possible, for sure. And sometimes, people, if they tune out and then they're just doing their own thing. But if they're really focused and working, then there are so many other things that they're focusing on that they can't be performing. They're just like their body is a laboratory, and if they're investigating that and they're dissecting what they have, then they can't really focus so much on how they look or if someone's looking at them. But people can go through that, and it is an hour and 15 minutes of moving nonstop, so the journey is very, up and down, and people can go in and out. But I've been in classes, especially when I was in Israel, taking class with the company, and then they would have a guest come in, a guest from outside, whether they're from another company or not, and then that person stands out like a sore thumb. It's so funny because they'll be there and they'll start moving, and then the first instruction is just like, look for small stretches in your between your rib cage, right? And that person is like going all out, and they're doing something that totally wasn't even asked for, so those people are probably more performing, but then it's the job of the teacher to bring that person down and to be like, okay, wait a second, everyone, let's just come to stillness. Okay, float. From here, let's do that. And then everyone does reach the same level and starts working from the same place. But I have experienced people do things like that.
Well, actually, then I'd like to talk about the other side of the coin, where you use Gaga as a choreographic tool to create something that will be performative. How do you, like, from your experience, how is that approach to use a movement language that is so much about the internal and the exploration of your own movement to something that will be meant for an audience?
Well, that's also the thing about Gaga, that even just because you're focusing internally, we don't always only focus internally, and we can work small but be big. So that's the thing about Gaga, that we can actually, there's lots of not just juxtapositions but contradictions that we explore in the body. We look for contradictions. So when you do Gaga, you there's such a gamut of things that we explore and that we research, that when you're performing, it doesn't matter if you're just moving your little finger on stage. It can still be projected and seen, on the other side of the theater.
So as we've established already, you're the only person in Canada who's teaching Gaga. And a lot of people aren't aware yet of Batsheva and of Ohad Naharin. However, when you were talking about your auditioning, you had people from all over the world who were interested in this training program. I'm wondering if you could take the temperature for us of Batsheva and of Gaga globally. What is happening there in terms of people's awareness of it, and where is it going?
Well, I think amongst dancers and professional dancers, Batsheva is a known company and a known word and name. However, I don't think that's the case with regular people that aren't dance audience. I'm sure that anyone you speak to, if they've seen a Batsheva show, they have very positive things to say about their experience and about what they saw. So I think all over the world, people know if the company has come to perform in their town, and if they've seen the show, then word of Batsheva will be known, especially in Europe, also Russia and in Asia. I'm not sure why in Canada I've found that a lot of people don't know so much about them. They have been here in Montreal, they've been in Toronto, they've been in Ottawa in the past, but I can't really say why they haven't reached as far in our country.
Can you predict its growth? I mean, it seems to me that it's just picking up speed now with the teacher training program just starting off.
With the teachers that have graduated from the program now being in their respective countries and teaching it, right? You're very right. And again, like I said, that was Ohad's scope. He really wanted to reach out of Israel when it came to people being exposed to Gaga. So slowly, people are teaching in all over Europe, really, in Belgium, in Switzerland, in Poland, in London. So I think with this outflow of us, I think more and more people will get to know it and start taking classes, and I think it's only time until everyone has tried Gaga.
And more specifically for Montreal dancers, what kind of opportunities to train in Gaga do you know about, which would be not too far, like other than going to Israel for professional workshops there?
Every summer there is a Gaga intensive that takes place in New York City, and company members that are stationed that live in Tel Aviv, they'll go and they'll teach repertoire and Gaga every day for the duration of the intensive. So that's an opportunity. It's not that far for us here. Otherwise, there are regular classes that are taught in New York at DNA or Dance New Amsterdam, for example, Mark Morris as well. But otherwise, you'd have to go further down in the States. Like there's a teacher in Texas. There are a few teachers in San Francisco. In Colorado, there's one teacher. In Minnesota, there's another. So that's about everyone, though. And then me up here.
Yeah, you're established in Montreal now.
Yeah.
This past year, you were teaching at 303 for a weekly class, which was one of their open classes. So I guess that one was more Gaga for the people type, where you really approached in this everybody is moving kind of way. Will you be giving classes for professional dancers also?
You're right. The classes that I was teaching at Studio 303 were in the evening, and I was doing a Gaga people class there because I understood that the audience was more, it could be anybody. But in fact, most of the people that came were dancers, except for a few. So I still had to stay true to it being a people class. But I will be teaching again at Studio 303, also people classes starting September. But I'll be doing dancer classes at Ballet Divertimento as of the end of August on Tuesdays and Saturdays. So those will be an hour and 15 minutes in length, and they will be dancer classes. And I will also, at Studio 303 next year in April, will teach a week workshop that I've titled Gaga and Improvisation Composition. And then sooner than that, at the RQD, I'll be teaching a week of dancer classes in October.
And I got the impression when you mentioned briefly that you are also dancing for other people in a performative sense. Where can we see you perform in the near future?
Well, because I've listened recently to some of your podcasts, a topic of discussion is the Zone Homa Festival. There's a choreographer from Barcelona that's coming. Don't know if you've heard.
Margarita?
Yes. She's part of the group from Barcelona called Les Filles Follennes, and I'm going to be participating in her creation and in the performance of that at the end of August. So I'm looking forward to participating. It's going to be really, really fun, I think, and they seem like interesting people and that they make interesting work. So come on down. So for more information, I recently just got a little website set up. It's still under construction, but do check back. But the information is there if you want to reach me or see what classes I'm teaching in the city. It's simply lauratoma.ca.
Well, we've been speaking with Laura Toma this lovely afternoon about Gaga, which is Ohad Naharin and Batsheva Company's movement language from Israel. And as we've mentioned a couple times, Laura is the only one who's teaching it here in Canada. So keep an eye out for her. Laura, thank you so much for coming on the show today and talking to us.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Dirty Feet is recorded every week at the Montreal Improv Theatre. Check them out at montrealimprov.com.
Dirty Feet is produced and hosted by
Alison Burns,
JD Papillon,
Joanie Parent,
and distributed by No More Radio.
You can find more about our show at nomoreradio.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Dirty Feet, and you can find us on Facebook at Dirty Feet Podcast. Tune in next week for a whole new show.